Let's talk about covert narcissism and intimacy and start breaking down and unmasking some of the secrets about that. Maybe you've seen and you felt this confusing mix of an emotional high and low when you talk about your intimate relationship with a covert narcissist. Maybe the sex has been amazing and then it's been awful. Maybe it's been manipulative and it's been back and forth. And you're like, I don't get this. Like, I don't understand like the highs and lows, the pieces that get confusing in it. So we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about 3 different things about this as we walk through the piece of covert narcissist and intimacy. Diving into this whole aspect, covert narcissist and intimacy. First thing I want to talk to you about is the deceptive emotional closeness. There becomes this like illusion of intimacy that happens between you and a narcissist, making you think that there's something actually there. Like there's actually like a depth. But what it is just an illusion. And all it does is it typically leaves you feeling empty to the place of like, I still long for this like genuine connection with this other person. And so it feels like there should be something there. It feels like sometimes there is something there. And then all of a sudden you're like, it's not there. Now, that's because narcissists are masters at manipulating through charm and through how they show up on a day-to-day basis, convincing you of a different version of themselves. Oftentimes making you feel deeply connected on the surface. So it's a little bit different. It's like there's this connection there. You have this connection, this bond with another person, but then you realize after you've been with them for a while, it's only surface level. It's a tight connection and it feels great, but it's only surface level. Oftentimes you'll see this where the narcissist will get a lot of information about you and get really close to you, but you have no clue about who he actually is. Oftentimes you see this. Okay. Now, using this in a way, narcissists will use carefully calculated behaviors, mirroring and love bombing, especially early on, to create an illusion of emotional intimacy. Now, you'll see this with mirroring a lot of times. Like if I can mirror you, you're going to see something come back to you that you like because it's part of you. Okay, so like something you like something you like to do, a place you like to go, a hobby you have, movies, music, whatever it may be, something like that. And narcissist mirrors it back to you. Then you have different attributes of your personality, how you talk, how you act, how you walk, all different types of things. Narcissists can mirror different stuff. So they're gonna mirror stuff back at you. You start and fall in love with that connection. She's like, oh my gosh, he gets me, he understands me, he does the same exact thing. Can't believe it. A lot of times it's mirroring, of reflecting it back at you so you fall in love with another version of you that they're creating to try to build a deep connection. But it's just an illusion. It's just a false aspect. It's just a fake version, if that makes sense. Okay, so when below this aspect of the illusion it's just a facade, hiding the true motive underneath. Like to be able to gain control, validation over you. Like that's the whole piece is like, what do I have to do to control you? What do I have to do to build a connection so that when I say jump, you jump. When I say move, you move. Like that's the whole aspect. The narcissist wants to get that control piece. Now, the hard part is there's like this closeness that happens and this like hidden agenda of like, I don't know what to actually believe. I don't know what's actually true. Like he says that he loves me, but it doesn't show up that way. It doesn't show that he actually cares. So think of it this way, like you get involved with a covert narcissist and at the beginning, it feels amazing. Like the love bombing comes out, showering you with affection that shows up like vulnerability, like he's talking to you about like his childhood of things that have affected him. Seems like you have shared interests. You like the same movies and music and genres of stuff. And it makes you feel like there's a deep emotional bond. It feels like this piece is like growing together and you're like, oh my gosh, we are soulmates. We're the best thing ever. But then over time, you start to realize that some of this intimacy was a facade, was fake, designed to manipulate and control your emotions. Now, this is one of the hardest things that you're going to see in and after the relationship as you start to see it. Because you start to see it, you start to doubt, and you're like, was anything real? Did he actually care about me? Was everything fake? Was I not good enough? Why didn't he want to be honest with me? Those and many more questions start to plague your mindset and you're like, I don't even understand. I don't even know what's happening or what was actually real. This is because we go into the point number 2, just the roller coaster of hot and cold, of going back and forth, of going up and down in the relationship that confuse and emotionally manipulate you. Narcissists do this by alternating between affection and attention and detachment and disconnection. Okay, like I'm going to connect with you and we're going to be great and you're going to get all this love and affection from me, and then all of a sudden pull back and you're like, what did I do wrong? Like there's something happening. What happened? And narcissists can go back and forth creating this emotional turmoil and they don't get affected by it. Okay, it's more of this like push pull of like, let me do this to be able to control you, to be able to manipulate you. But it's not like their emotions are going back and forth. A lot of times it's like, nope, gonna do this, don't like you anymore. Sometimes it can be an aspect of like perceived betrayal of like, oh, well, you went and hung out with your family, so you're betraying me. So yeah, no, I'm not talking to you today. Okay, pushing you back and forth. It doesn't connect the same way to them as it does mess up with you, like mess up your head. Okay, think of it like alternating between showing affection and then withdrawing emotionally, creating this cycle, this constant cycle of highs and lows. Oftentimes I'll refer to it as intermittent reinforcement of the highs and the lows in the relationship. Think of it almost like a heart monitor, up and down, over and over. And you're like, it's amazing, it's awful. It's amazing, it's awful. It's amazing, it's awful. And over a period of time, you start to believe that it's more amazing than it is awful. Because the awful, it's easier to disconnect from and only view the amazing. This is why people looking back on the relationship start to think it wasn't that bad. Because all they're seeing in the moment is the positive. They're not seeing the negative stuff that actually happened because they're typically pushing it away or discounting it. So this actually puts you in a place where you're uncertain and you're dependent on that other person. You're craving like the positive attention. Like you're fearing like, what if they actually detach? What if they actually leave and actually leave this time? What if he actually leaves me alone? What do I do then? And it's built that way to make you feel addicted, to make you feel like this piece of like almost like whiplash back and forth of like, I'm used to this, so what do I do without it? Okay. Now, you're going to have a narcissist that's going to try to distract you by giving you maybe love for a brief period of time and then withdraw away and all of a sudden become distant. This leaves you on this emotional roller coaster we talked about where you're like, wait a second, was it my fault? Did I do something? And you start to doubt yourself. You start to believe alternate versions of what's actually true, thinking maybe I need to go back and apologize for what? I didn't do anything. But it puts you in a place where you're anxious, confused, and desperate for the return of that positive affection from the narcissist. This is where after the relationship, you get out, but you're like, I still want to go back. And it's a piece of the trauma bond that sucks you back into the toxic relationship. Then we move into the third aspect, which is exploiting the emotional piece of your openness. Like the manipulation piece, like through the vulnerability, through the different pieces that are happening there. So like what I mean by this is a narcissist will use your vulnerabilities to gain control and sympathy, hiding what's actually going on underneath. Now there's a couple sides to this. One, they'll use your vulnerability to try to connect with you. And then two, they'll try to bring their vulnerability to the table to try to make you connect with them. Now, this is the one that people get confused on for the narcissist. They're like, but he was being vulnerable. He was telling me like really deep and really hard stuff. But narcissists oftentimes pretend to be vulnerable and pretend to share deepest struggles, making it feel like you are privileged to get the information. Like they trusted you with such personal information and you're like, wow, like he must really care about me to be able to share this. But a couple things that happen here. One that's kind of popular is narcissists that are vulnerable, one about their past. Really far distant past. I was abused when I was 4 years old. Therefore, this is why I'm insecure. This is why I pushed you back and forth. Okay. So using something in the past to justify behaviors in the present. But then also vulnerable about stuff in the past is a popular tactic that narcissists will use. Not being vulnerable about the present. This is how I feel. This is what I'm working on. This is what I'm dealing with. You don't see that. Okay. With narcissism, the vulnerability piece is more calculated. It's more like a tactic in order to gain sympathy. If I can be vulnerable about my pet that died when I was 6 years old and caused a traumatic experience, you're going to have sympathy for me, and you're also going to feel that I'm actually vulnerable when I'm not. I'm just saying stuff that happened in the past. Another piece is sometimes narcissists will use this fake vulnerability of the past using other people's stories. We've seen this happen too, where you realize and you connect the dots that they never had this situation happen to them, but they use someone else's story as their own to play the victim and to come across more vulnerable. It's pretty wild, but we've seen it happen several times where narcissists will use other people's experiences saying this happened to them to get that piece of sympathy. Like the whole goal of the sympathy and of the vulnerability is to slowly put it on you so that you feel like you're responsible for the narcissist's emotional well-being. Okay? So think of it this way, like you get to a place where you empathize with the covert narcissist's apparent vulnerability. So the things that have happened. You might share stories of the past, leading you to feel that urge of let me support, let me protect them. The narcissist wants you to feel that, because if you feel that, you start taking responsibility for them. It leads you down this place of like, oh, let me support, let me help, let me fix, let me protect, and it starts to build a bond. Okay, the thing you don't realize is the narcissist is using this to manipulate you, to manipulate your emotions, and to get control over the relationship. This is the whole goal. If you find yourself and you're stuck in this place of where you feel like you are stuck and the narcissist is in control of you, your mind, will, emotions, they're in control of you, the trauma bond, the rumination, the intrusive thoughts, the limiting beliefs, you feel crazy because you're like, I don't want this person in my life, but I still want to go back to them. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a trauma bond, the cognitive dissonance piece. In order to break that, we walk you through a step-by-step process where I put you in a community of other people, of like-minded people that are going through the same exact journey, and put you in a step-by-step process of what he's thinking, of what you're going through, of how to be able to break through the aspect of the trauma bond and ultimately be free.